headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, January 30th, here on the Korean Peninsula. North Korea fires a series of cruise missiles into the West Sea early this morning, just 2 days after its claims of having tested submarine-launched strategic cruise missiles off its east coast. Meanwhile, in Russia, Vladimir Putin is running for the March 15th presidential race to mark his fifth campaign for the top office, and should he succeed, he is poised to stay in power for at least another 12 years. Meanwhile, here in South Korea, the government will digitalize some 1,500 bureaucratic procedures over the next 3 years to ease the related administrative burden on members of the public. We start with news of additional displays of defiance by North Korea. The regime launched a series of cruise missiles at around 7 in the morning on this Tuesday off its west coast. Now, this is according to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff. The latest launch comes just 2 days after North Korea's claims of Kim Jong-un overseeing submarine-launched strategic cruise missiles off its east coast this past Sunday. Relevant authorities here and their U.S. counterparts are conducting a detailed analysis of the launch, which marks the third in less than a week. Meanwhile, in the U.S., National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg met on Monday to share their concerns of a military collaboration between North Korea and Russia. During talks in Washington, the two officials acknowledged that an arms transfer would further assist Russia with its warfare in Ukraine. Stoltenberg is in the U.S. to address continued support for Ukraine ahead of the NATO summit to be held in Washington this coming July. And Russian President Vladimir Putin is officially running for the presidential race in March. And a successful campaign looks to extend his rule for at least another decade. Our Ioni reports.
Russia's President Vladimir Putin will be running for office for the fifth time in the 2024 presidential election. On Monday, Russia's Election Commission announced his official registration as a candidate for the upcoming election in March.
Who is for, who is against, who abstained, approved unanimously.
Running as an independent, Putin required at least 300,000 signatures gathered by his campaign from at least 40 regions of Russia. Following an examination of 315,000 signatures collected from 89 regions, Russia's Central Election Commission officially approved Putin's candidacy for the election.
It's a great honor to receive and hand over the certificate of Russia's presidential candidacy to Vladimir Putin. I will do it very soon.
The 71-year-old incumbent president has an approval rating of about 80%. Putin's chance of securing another 6-year term in power is almost certain, especially with opposition figures and independent media outlets in danger of suppression. Opposition leader Alexei Navalny was handed a 19-year jail term in 2021 on charges of extremism, having led protests against the Kremlin. 3 other candidates from parties represented in parliament have also been approved by the commission, representing the Communist Party, the Nationalist Liberal Democratic Party, and the New People Party. Another potential candidate is liberal politician Boris Nadezhin, who expressed his support for an end to the conflict in Ukraine, but his candidacy is still under review. After first coming to power in 2000, Putin has won all 4 presidential elections in which he has been a candidate. He also served a 4-year term as prime minister from 2008 to 2012. In 2018, Putin separated himself from the United Russia Party, choosing to run independently, winning over 75% of the votes. Putin himself made a change to Russia's constitution in 2020, which allows him to run for 2 more 6-year terms and potentially remain in power until 2036. Yoon, Arirang News.
The European Union is extending its sanctions on Russia for another 6 months to the end of July this year. Intentions to this end were shared on Monday by the EU Council, citing Russia's ongoing warfare in Ukraine. EU sanctions against Russia have been in place since its annexation of the Crimean Peninsula back in 2014. The scope of those sanctions have since been expanded following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. The most recent round of sanctions includes a ban on the import of Russian diamonds. Staying on the international front, Israel has made an alarming accusation against at least a dozen UN workers at the Agency for Palestinian Refugees, asserting that they played a tangible part in the October 7th attack against Israel led by Hamas. Our Yoon covers this allegation and its related repercussions.
More than 10 countries, including major donors such as the United States, United Kingdom, and Germany, have suspended funding to the UNRWA, the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East, since Friday. This was following an Israeli intelligence dossier presenting allegations that some staff took part in abductions and killings during the October 7th raid that sparked the Gaza war. According to Reuters, the 6-page document claims some 190 UNRWA employees, including teachers, have doubled as Hamas or Islamic Jihad militants, with names and pictures for 11 of them. A UN spokesperson said that the organization has not formally received a copy of the dossier and reiterated that the UNRWA would be unable to continue operations in Gaza and across the region beyond the end of February if funding isn't resumed.
And the United Nations is taking swift action following the extremely serious allegations made against several staff members from UNRWA. Critical humanitarian work that the UN does, not only in Gaza, all over the region, needs to be supported. People's lives depend on it.
He added that organization chief Antonio Guterres met with the head of internal UN investigations to ensure that an inquiry into the allegations will be done swiftly and as efficiently as possible. At a news conference, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that the allegations were highly credible and deeply troubling. Without saying how soon or under what circumstances the U.S. would consider resuming support for UNRWA, Blinken said that Washington would be looking very hard at the steps UNRWA takes in response.
The reports that we got last week, and UNRWA brought them to us, were deeply, deeply troubling. It is imperative that UNRWA immediately, as it said it would, investigate, that it hold people accountable as necessary, and that it review its procedures. I had a very good...
The recent revelation jeopardizes aid operation in the region, as the agency supported more than half of Gaza's 2.3 million Palestinians in day-to-day assistance, which have already been stretched thin by the long-running war. Yoon, Arirang News.
Also, in the Middle East, Biden administration officials have reaffirmed U.S. intentions to take action against the fatal attack on its base in Jordan this past Sunday. They have, however, refrained from elaborating on details of their planned response. Our Yoon has the latest.
3 U.S. soldiers were killed and dozens injured in a drone attack on a base in Jordan by Iran-supported forces on Sunday. This prompted a response from Washington with a vow to retaliate against Iran-backed forces for their deadly attack. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Monday that the U.S. will engage in strong multi-level and continuous retaliation against those responsible for the attack. White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby, in an interview with MSNBC on Monday, also reiterated President Joe Biden's earlier call for retaliation. Kirby stressed that the U.S. must do what it can to protect its soldiers and facilities, adding Biden will make the right decision at the right time. However, the spokesman stressed that the U.S. does not want a war with Iran, nor does it want to escalate tensions in the Middle East. When asked if that meant there wouldn't be any military action inside Iran, Kirby avoided a direct answer, instead saying that the U.S. will respond appropriately. Meanwhile, the U.S. Defense Department identified the 3 soldiers who were killed on Sunday in the drone attack conducted by the Iran-backed militant groups. 46-year-old Sergeant William Rivers, 24-year-old Specialist Kennedy Sanders, and 23-year-old Specialist Brianna Moffitt, all from the U.S. state of Georgia, were killed in the attack. Pentagon Deputy Press Secretary Sabrina Singh said all 3 were assigned to the 718th Engineer Company, a U.S. Army Reserve unit based out of Fort Moore, Georgia. Yoon, Arirang News.
The government will digitalize some 1,500 bureaucratic procedures over the next 3 years to ease the related burden on members of the public. Speaking at the 7th government policy briefing open to the public, this time on the theme of digitalization, earlier on this Tuesday, President Yoon highlighted the importance of simplifying administrative processes to access government services and benefits amid public complaints of complex protocols. Efforts are also underway for regulations to discourage deceptive item selling practices by gaming companies and to better expand telemedicine. Also in the news, Korea's trade regulators are hammering out a framework of guidelines to ensure fair business practices among online platforms. And according to Moon Hae-ryun, details will be disclosed in the few weeks coming up.
A bill to regulate market domination by online platforms has sparked debate among domestic and global businesses in the tech industry. The Online Platform Fairness Act is currently being drafted by South Korea's Fair Trade Commission, with the bill set to be announced sometime next month. The FTC aims to prohibit unfair business practices and ease consumer burdens by restricting market leaders from keeping competition in check. This in turn could provide more opportunities for small and medium-sized businesses and startups to enter the market. While the full details of the bill have yet to be revealed, the FTC has said that it would crack down on platforms that are engaging in monopolistic practices, citing Google's policies preventing game publishers from releasing their titles outside of Google's Play Store. It also cited domestic tech giant Kakao's manipulation of its algorithm to favor its own cab drivers above others on its Kakao mobility apps. The regulator has said that it will define market leaders by setting a quantitative standard such as for sales and the number of users, similarly to how the EU qualifies a large online platform as a gatekeeper in its Digital Markets Act. But domestic startup firms were found to have concerns in a survey conducted by Startup Alliance Korea, with many saying that startups that are not profitable but have a large number of users face being regulated, which could hinder growth. In response to growing concerns from the tech industry, the government says it will limit the number of companies it defines as a market leader to 4 or 5 firms. These are most likely to be domestic tech companies Naver and Kakao, as well as global firms such as Google and Apple. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce voiced opposition to these proposed regulations, calling on Seoul to provide sufficient opportunity for dialogue with Washington and that the full text of the proposed legislation should be made publicly available. It's expected that it will take more than a year to implement the law even after the disclosure of the bill, considering the time it takes for the bill to pass through the National Assembly and subsequent subordinate laws to be enacted. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Here in Seoul, as shared with you in our previous newscast, we now have a transportation card that offers unlimited access to public transport within the capital city at a monthly rate. And to better gauge the public sentiment to this new campaign, my colleague Park Kon-woo was out and about.
Unlimited access to public transportation is now available in the capital. The Seoul Metropolitan Government started a new 6-month pilot project on Saturday that allows limitless public transport access with its so-called climate card as a means to cope with climate change and lower household expenses. The card is based on the D-ticket issued in Germany. According to the Metropolitan Government, it is expecting 13,000 fewer cars to be used and a cut of 32,000 tons in greenhouse gases emitted annually through this project. The climate card allows people to ride subways or buses within Seoul for 62,000 Korean won, or a little under $50 per month, if downloaded to a mobile phone, and even public bikes if users add around $2 more.
2만 원 정도 절약되는 걸로 알고 있습니다. 교통비가 고정적으로 나가니까 좀 좋을 것 같다 생각을 하고 있습니다.
The card is valid on subway lines within the Seoul region, including numbers 1 to 9, Sillim and Suinbundang, among others, although some are excluded, such as the Shinbundang line, due to different fare structures. Users will need to pay an additional charge to subway employees when traveling to stations not included in the pilot project. Most intra-capital bus routes are also part of the project. Green and blue buses heading to places outside Seoul are included if the bus license plate was issued by the Seoul local government. The transport passes can be bought at offices inside subway stations or nearby convenience stores. I also bought this card, the climate card, for 3,000 won. You just need to charge it using this machine, just like any other transportation card. Android phone users can get the mobile version of the card by downloading the T-Money application. After sales began on January 23rd, nearly 200,000 cards were sold within 3 days, leading to many subway stations and convenience stores running out due to their popularity. And more than 70,000 people used the card on the first day. But some spoke about the need for improvement.
광역버스나 지하철 여러 가지 노선도 다 이용 가능하게 하면은 많은 사람들이 더 이용할 것 같아요.
Meanwhile, Seoul said it would do its best to remove any inconveniences found during the climate card pilot project. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
In other news, the Cabinet has passed a motion urging the Parliament to reconsider its bill, which calls for an independent probe into the 2022 Itaewon crowd crush. Speaking to members of the Cabinet earlier on this Tuesday, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo highlighted hopes for fresh parliamentary negotiations that allow for a bipartisan bill on the matter. Separately, the government also on this Tuesday held a press conference to share plans for financial and psychological support for families of the victims, as well as intentions to set up a committee for communication between the government and the bereaved families. Meanwhile, should President Yoon Suk-yeol choose to veto the latest parliamentary bills, it would mark his 5th such action since taking office. A group of Korean Olympic medalists took time to speak to teenage athletes at the Gangwon Winter Games this past weekend. Their shared words of wisdom were, "Do not let the fear of failure hold you back." Our Choi Soo-young has more.
Grow together, shine forever. In Korea's eastern province of Gangwon, where the Winter Youth Olympics are taking place, 3 legendary Korean Olympic gold medalists gathered with the teens on Sunday to share their youthful experiences. In their presentations, they provided practical advice and hopeful messages on how to overcome limitations and achieve their goals. Kim Yeona, the iconic figure skater who won gold and silver Olympic medals in 2010 and 2014 respectively, said she was always prepared to fall and controlled her mental health.
I prepared for the worst and imagined making mistakes before the games, all to take care of my mental health. I've always thought that it's okay if things don't go well, and the thought that I can fail anytime helped me relieve the pressure.
Yoo Seung-min, the gold medalist in table tennis at the 2004 Olympics and a member of the International Olympic Committee Athletes Commission since 2016, said it was important not to set limits based on what people say, especially after hard preparations.
Nobody expected me to win, but I had confidence in myself because I had prepared a lot. I could have been low on confidence because people had judged me in that way, but I kept myself thinking, oh, I did well even when I lost. So ironically, it eased the pressure on me.
2018 Olympic skeleton gold medalist Yoon Sung-bin emphasized trying to experience as much as possible to find one's own strengths.
When you are young, it's good to try many different things. I believe that finding one's talent is the hardest task. So, you need to have various experiences to discover what you can excel in.
The Gangwon 2024 Winter Youth Olympics, with South Korea hosting the first ever event in Asia, will run until February 1st. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. In France, groups of farmers on Monday blocked major roads towards the capital, Paris, with tractors and a wall of hay in what they're calling the Siege of Paris. With similar demonstrations taking place across the country, the French police have not yet intervened to remove the roadblocks. Angry farmers have been protesting for days, the majority of whom are unhappy about the EU's 2023 nature restoration law, which requires environmental measures to restore a fifth of the member states' land and sea by 2030. Protests have spread to Belgium and Germany, where tractors are blocking routes to Hamburg's ports. French authorities have reportedly mobilized around 15,000 police officers to prevent tractors from entering Paris and other major cities. But many farmers show their determination to stay in protest until change is made, with some saying that their aim is to stop food deliveries to supermarkets. A French government spokesperson said on Monday afternoon that new measures in support of the farmers will likely be announced from Tuesday onwards. Hong Kong's High Court on Monday ordered the liquidation of the debt-ridden giant property developer Evergrande. In what is expected to be a heavy blow to the Chinese economy, Evergrande has been at the center of China's property crisis as the world's most indebted property giant exceeds $300 billion in debt. Evergrande's liquidation order comes as the Chinese real estate giant failed to agree on a concrete debt restructuring plan with its international creditors, even after negotiating for the past 19 months. Judge Linda Chan turned down Evergrande's request made on Friday for another 3 months of leeway, saying that enough is enough. The Shenzhen-based developer defaulted on its debt in 2021 and filed for bankruptcy in New York in 2023. Evergrande had total liabilities of $333 billion in June last year. Hong Kong courts showed that overseas creditors are owed $25 billion. While it remains unclear how much effect the Hong Kong court's decision can have in mainland China, experts speculate ripples to be felt in capital markets around the world. In sports news, Olympic gold medalist and Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva has received a 4-year suspension for doping. The Court of Arbitration for Sport's decision on Monday also effectively strips the Russian Olympic Committee of its gold medal in the team event. Valieva tested positive for the banned substance trimetazidine, used for the prevention of angina, at the Russian National Championships in December 2021. However, her positive result was only made known a day after she won gold at the Beijing Winter Olympics in 2022, to which the IOC decided no medals would be given out until Valieva's case has been resolved. As the Lausanne-based court decided on Monday, Valieva's 4-year ban is backdated to the 25th of December 2021. The world's largest cruise ship, the Icon of the Seas, began its maiden voyage on Saturday from the port of Miami. The ship is around 365 meters from bow to stern, which is the size of almost 4 city blocks. The cruise ship, operated by the Royal Caribbean Group, is divided into 8 neighborhoods across 20 decks, including 6 water slides, 7 swimming pools, an ice skating rink, a theater, and more than 40 restaurants, bars and lounges. The 7,600 passenger capacity cruise ship, which carries another 2,350 crew members, is powered by liquefied natural gas that may reduce sulfur and greenhouse gas emissions. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. As soon as the cold snap subsides, the air quality worsens in most places. Even Gyeongsang-do provinces will see air quality hitting bad levels in the afternoon. Those in southern provinces need to brace for frequent rain for the next few days. Rain that started from Jeju this afternoon should spread to Jeollanam-do province tonight. Then the rest of the south will receive rain tomorrow at dawn. Jeju could see up to 30 millimeters. The rest of the south will see 5 to 10 millimeters of rainfall. Afternoon highs are 1 to 5 degrees higher than yesterday. Seoul topping out at 7, Gyeongju, Jeju getting up to 12 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Meanwhile, cold wave alerts remain in place for many parts of Gangwon-do, but Pyeongchang finally sees highs jumping to above freezing at 1 degree. Now, Seoul sees a high of 9 degrees tomorrow. Meanwhile, a frequent wintry mix is in the forecast for southern regions and east of Gangwon-do province for the time being. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, and that's all the time we have for Tuesday's afternoon newscast. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. Do stay with us.